Jeremy says, do you think it was unsettling that Kyle was saying on McVay's podcast that he didn't want the job at first? I don't want my coach saying that. No, again, it's just the truth. It's honest. It's, if you remember 4 years ago, it was the worst job in the hiring cycle, and the only reason he probably went there is because he did get turned down at a couple of places. And I think part of the reason he got turned down is because his team wasn't out of it, and you have to wait on that guy.
Yeah,
he's always the last guy to put together his staff. There's always a race to get the to get the head
They
coach.
had a conversation about that exact thing, and McVay talked about how it's weird in our business that the person who's having the most success has the worst opportunity when it comes to a head coaching job, because the
last
people
in line
want
to put together.
Yeah. But
I
don't think it was unsettling, but this just goes back to the theme of this show. It was just another unnecessary detail. Why say it? Yeah.
Your fans don't want to hear that. Your owner doesn't want to hear that. It's understood. You kept it real, but that's an example of when keeping it real goes wrong.
I understand. I understand. I understand what he was trying to say, right? He was trying to put it within the positive outlook of, I had my reservations, and look at how Jed and Prague changed my mind. Look at how first class this organization is. He really meant it as a compliment. I just think it's a very difficult thing to twist, especially when words can be taken so out of context. I think that one was a tough sell when you actually say the words, they weren't my first choice at first. I think he would have been better off just framing it as, I had my reservations at first because, they didn't have a great roster. The things he said, 31st in offense, 31st in defense, all of those things. If he says that, I don't think it's a storyline at all. I don't know. I feel like there's just a couple words. And really, I took AP English classes, so you're trained in terms of to pick out particular words from writers. I mean, one of the worst essays I ever wrote, Portrait of an Artist as a Young Man, James Joyce. Did not understand a word of that novel. My teacher used to we used to have to
Doesn't
read
it start from the perspective of an infant?
Yeah. So it starts with a bunch of random words. And Stephen Davis is the main character, and it's kind of like an autobiography of Joyce. Stephen Davis is kind of Joyce, but he's not. But it's funny because we used to have to read chapters. So I would read the chapters, but I wouldn't annotate. What I would do is my teacher used to go over the chapters we had to read then in the morning in class, and he would then interpret the book for us. And that's when I used to annotate. I'd have my book out, first period English, and I would just be writing everything he says, give him my book for my annotations. He'd give my annotations back. He would be like, 10 out of 10, great in-depth, great insight. And I'd be like, oh, that was your insight. That was your. But the point is, that was an essay. You pick out particular choices, because words are choices for authors, right? They're choices, and
that's
you pick out particular words.
Major. Yep.
You pick out particular words, and you understand why you chose to say those words. That's what's happening here.
Yeah.
You're trying to understand why he chose to say that exact statement.
What was the effect that this choice had on the reader? Why did the author choose to use this word? Why was it an effective choice? In this sense, it was not an effective choice, Kyle. No, the way at UCLA, when they taught you, when you're an English major, you have these intro to writing classes. And basically when you're doing literary criticism is you start off by circling 3 words in a paragraph and focusing your criticism on those 3 choices. Why was this word charged? Why was it important? What effect did it have? All that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's exactly. Good call, Vish. Was this high school for you? I didn't take AP.
This is high school.
Take AP English. Which is one of the reasons I got B's.
Lucky you. Those 3 essays in the AP exam, 50 minutes each. Oh my God, my hands used to die writing those. I used to write so fast. But here's the interesting
thing. I took AP French instead and got a 2 on that. Ha!
Here's the interesting thing, though, right? Because I think this is kind of the important distinction is for people who are covering the game compared to people who are, actually involved in the game. The important thing is obviously Kyle doesn't put the thought into his words that F. Scott Fitzgerald put into his words for The Great Gatsby, right? For F. Scott Fitzgerald, every word, right? Every word has to be perfect. There's a reason why every word is used. Kyle's just talking off the cuff. The problem is the people that are covering the sport are often people like you who are trained to listen to every word and ask questions about every single word because you're analyzing authors. And that's why, that's why these stories get created, because that's the important distinction, that you're analyzing from the thought process that every single thing that this person says is well thought out and has a reasoning on why he's saying it. He's just talking.
Yeah, but what he needs to learn now is that as the head coach of the 49ers, he's responsible for the choice of his words. And he's the master of the unspoken word, which is something my grandma used to say, which means you don't got to say everything that crosses through your brain. You really don't have to. And what was funny is to me is, again, I cut my teeth covering hardball. You understand how hard it was to get anything out of him? Anything. I mean, much better reporters than me just failed. And every question was, what do you mean by that? Where are you going with that? What are you talking about? Kyle just gives it up. He's like, oh, what you want me to say? I like Matthew Stafford. I like Matthew Stafford. No problem. It's like, man, just make it easy.
And I think that's where, like, Belichick, as much as, a lot of media people feel like he's taken the game a step back because he's created this kind of CIA mentality. I think he benefits himself because he never is in the conversation for anything besides football. Because I'm sure he's a
and
very
again, if Kyle aspires to being the next Belichick, well, you're a lot different than him in this sense.
But even there's other ways to do it, right? Like there's Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin says a lot. He's always gracious with his time to the media and everything, but he never makes a mistake on what he says or changes anything that would create any sort of conversation. And that's the important thing. You have to, I feel like the mastery of this, and I feel like this is the one thing, actually, I wouldn't say, I would say this is the one thing Robert Saleh has mastered. It's sounding like you're giving the people who are covering the game a lot of information without giving them a lot of information. I think that's the key to working
Fred
the media.
Warner does that
that's
too.
how I understood it. That's how I understand it. Right. And I think
you're
that
polite, you're agreeable, you're not contentious, you try, but you don't say anything that hurts the franchise.
Or anything that would create any sort of controversy. And I think that's the important thing. Like, sometimes I feel like Kyle, when he makes that Florio comment, he thinks that all his words are tame, but really going that in depth into describing Matthew Stafford, again, doesn't affect you in any negative way. There's just nothing positive from it either.
Also, let's say one more thing before we move on. Jimmy Ward can do that. Jimmy Ward on my interview was going like, what's the deal with Matthew Stafford? Really? Did they need to move on from Jimmy Garoppolo? I mean, from Jared Goff? I mean, was that the right move? Because Jared Goff, you know what? Jimmy Ward can do that. Kyle can't. Because Jimmy Ward, like the national media isn't hanging on every word Jimmy Ward says. Well, he doesn't represent the entire organization. Kyle
that's the difference.
That's the difference. T-Money Sacktown says, hey, Grant, hey, Vish. So when is your next show on running backs? I've got some questions and concerns.
It could be next week. It could be now, whenever you want. Yeah.
Yeah, let's do next week because we got more topics.
What does he want to talk about with running backs?
I don't know. He should have told us. But next week we'll do some running backs. You can chime in. Barry Z-Dep says Shanahan will have more surly media sessions once preseason starts. He's going to be constantly asked about Trey Lance, whether JG is starting or not, and that will irritate him. Well, he created the situation.
I don't think that should irritate him anyway. He should be excited to talk about Trey Lance.
Yeah.
He should be. Yeah.
You should want to talk about Trey Lance.
Yeah.
And again, Kyle keeps it real, and Kyle's not wedded to Jimmy. So if Trey's playing well, he'll say so. He already has been. Double B Studio says, Grant, you have to try to get Frank Gore. Oh, man. Frank Gore doesn't like me. That'd be interesting. One time I did a face-to-face interview with Frank Gore where he was like squaring off against me. I was about 24. That was good. I like that. Frank Gore, good guy. I like him. He's really cool. But, these players change immensely when they retire. All of a sudden, they want to talk. Patrick Willis did a half-hour interview couple weeks ago.
No way.
I never. When he got inducted to the Hall of Fame, man, he talked forever. And he never really felt comfortable in front of the media. But I guess it's like when you're really good and you're a kid and you don't feel like confident, maybe verbally, you're like, man, get these guys away from me. I don't know where they're coming from. But then you're 37, maybe feel more confident, and people aren't hounding you. It's like, wait a second, let's do it for real. So maybe Frank Gore, maybe I could. We'll see.